But just to understand from a layman's side or the young entrepreneurs who are seeing you as a role model, because as a layman, what I feel that if you want to run an NGO also, there should be some good backup. So what that backup is for you?
So I'm on the board of trustees. So obviously Agastya is a very big team, and it was started by Ramji Raghavan, who was a banker who was based in London. And around the turn of the century, of 1999, he quit his job because he wanted to do something in education. He wasn't quite sure at that time what.
I still remember in 80s when I was in school. There at that time, obviously in India, it was like either you be an engineer or you be a doctor. Even commerce was not there at that time, so it was like only a doctor or engineer. But in those days also, if you see US and other countries, there was a culture where people were actually doing what they wish to. How Agastya or anyone else whom you know that is building on that platform where actually these kind of jobs can be created.
I mean, this is something that the ecosystem ultimately creates itself. It's a very similarly a chicken and egg situation. That you have people who are interested in music, they start making it, especially when you're the first.
When you see today's schooling, don't you feel that it's overhyped?
These things have a way of coming around, right? You have now people wearing tattered clothes and paying a lot of money. Right? People, that whole look has come back as well. See, I mean, I won't say anything about the system because there is a truth to learning in nature, and it does bring a lot. I wouldn't say you should overcharge for it, obviously, but
Hello, guys. So today we have a very special guest with us. He's Adhireth Sethi, an entrepreneur, board of Agastya International Foundation, and a chairman of Navam Foundation. So he's having an immense knowledge about business, about NGOs, and how a successful business can work. So be in this podcast for a complete show, and I can assure you that you will gain a lot in your life today. We are talking about his latest book, The Moving of Mountains. It's a remarkable journey about the Agastya International Foundation. And we'll be covering all these things in this detailed podcast with him. So, sir, welcome to the show. So, the first question comes to you. You wear various caps, various hats, you should say. You are chairman of Navam Foundation. You are on the board of Agastya. You are an entrepreneur. But at the core, who is Adhirath Sethi?
well, I think the various hats do help. I think it keeps the mix in play, and you always have something that you're looking forward to. And as we grow up, I think we tend to specialize into one thing, and I was very keen that that might not be for me. So even when I started my business initially and was running it, it was around 2008, 2009. The financial crisis was in full flow. And writing came to me at that time as a release, as a kind of way to keep busy uh, during the downtimes. And I had to be present in my plant because I have a factory, but at the same time I couldn't leave. At the same time, just sitting there worrying was not doing me any good. And so it was a wonderful thing to discover that writing was a way for me to fill that time and be productive at the same time. Similarly, Agastya is an organization that is very dear to my heart, and I've watched it from inception. I've watched it literally grow from the ground up. And when in 2019 we decided Agastya had completed 20 years, and we wanted to encapsulate the story and capture a lot of the anecdotes, the insights, perspectives of especially people that had helped Agastya become what it was. I felt it was a great time to write a book and bring that story into one place.
So, for the audience, what exactly is Agastya?
So, Agastya, we describe it as the world's largest experiential hands on learning platform. And that is quite a
So, it's a
mouthful.
schooling or it's a
So,
platform?
exactly. So, it is not a school, but what we do is take science learning to the schools, to government schools, to villages, to typically disadvantaged or disenfranchised sections of society where we know that children are maybe not getting the kind of richness of education that they might be getting, say, in the city schools. And what Agastya tries to do is encourage them to get more engaged in science. And as we say, we try and spark curiosity, we try and nurture creativity, and we try to instill a spirit of innovation in these children.
So, how you do this exactly? If briefly, if you can say, tell.
So we do it through a series of, we have a dissemination model. It's a hub and spoke model. So at the center of it is a campus in Andhra Pradesh, in Kuppam. And this is basically the ideation hub. So it's a beautiful 172-acre campus that itself evolved over time. And there are smaller science centers all over the country, in 23 states now. And these science centers act like watering holes. So they house thousands, you could say, of experiments, hands on science experiments. And each day a mobile van will come. It will stock up with the kind of experiments it needs for that day. And it will then go to a school, and it will go to a number of schools and spend about 2 hours at each school. The schools have been pre informed that a mobile van will be coming. And what it does is it takes kids out of class, and the kids get to interact with the experiments, with these hands on models. The instructors, or in Agastya as we call them, ignators, they are encouraged to describe to the children how the science is working in principle, and to engage them and encourage them to ask why, to encourage them to ask questions about what's happening. And the whole idea is to bring joy and encouragement back into the learning process. Because many children, not just in government schools, but I think across the education spectrum, with the way that marks have become extremely important, and it matters only if you get 98 or 99%, otherwise, it's as good as you should not even have written the paper. We wanted to backtrack a little bit from that crazy, sort of strenuous pace that kids are eventually subject to. And so we try and catch them between maybe the fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth standards. And we try and infuse a lot of joy into the learning process for them. And so Agastya does this with mobile vans. It has a series of bikes. It has a lab in a box concept where a person takes a lot of these experiments in a box, uses public transport to reach a very, very remote school. And the idea is to reach children who cannot be reached, who otherwise would have been forgotten by the education system, or who are otherwise in schools that are so small that even if they were extremely bright, it's very tough for them to break out of that and to make themselves heard and to feel that their intellect is something that matters.
Great. You are an entrepreneur, and the way you have explained the Agastya, obviously that involves a lot of cost into it. Making 23 centers, 172 acre of campus, labs, and all those things. It requires a lot of cost into it. So if you're perfectly fine, if you can let me know what the business model in this, because I don't understand that if a remote village school can pay you for that, or how that works.
So it's a charity, it's a not-profit, and it works purely on donor funds.
Okay.
And we've been extremely lucky that we've had some extremely eminent people step forward and see what Agastya is doing and recognize the potential in creating a generation of children that are
So
thinkers.
that's totally an NGO.
It is totally an NGO. That's
Any,
right.
any support from government side?
Yes, we do get government support as well. So there are some private, public, or other government Agastya partnerships in few key states, and those have also helped immensely, both from the point of view of coverage, both from the point of view of getting support from the schools, and yes, definitely financially, it has been a huge.
Or just to understand from a layman side, or the young entrepreneurs who are seeing you as an a role model, because as a layman what I feel that if you want to run an NGO also, there should be some good backup. So what that backup is for you, your other businesses or your family background?
So I'm on the board of trustees. So obviously Agastya is a very big team, and it was started by Ramji Raghavan, who was a banker who was based in London. And around the turn of the century, in 1999, he quit his job because he wanted to do something in education. He wasn't quite sure at that time what. And so he left everything there, despite being extremely successful, and felt that for his soul, he wanted to do something that was nearer to both India as well as to education, because that was something very dear to his heart. And once he came back, he started having discussions with the folks who then became his co-founders to understand what is lacking in Indian education. And together, they were the ones who created the initial model of Agastya, who created creativity, curiosity, and innovative thought as the pillars, as we would say, of Agastya's early stages. And later on, these were added to include caring and confidence, because we really felt that at the end of the day, when you teach a child something important, what you are doing is definitely imparting some knowledge to them, but you're also giving them a huge dose of confidence. You're giving them that belief that they can ask why and question things. So there's a huge engine, you could say, that runs behind all this. I, of course, sit on the board, And the reason I wrote the book was having been on the board, having watched Agastya even as I was a child. When I was 16 or 17, the foundation started. So having a front seat view, you could say, in terms of how it grew, I felt I was in a good position to describe the story and to relate to how the foundation had evolved.
So how you got involved in Agastya? Your
So I've been
family?
involved because Ramji is my uncle.
Okay.
And so he was, so for me, it was, I was roped into a lot of the early workshops. I was asked to come and, sit on the panels when they were asking children again what they would like to see in education, how things could be improved. And so I spent a lot of my summers basically getting involved in those kinds of projects. And then much later on, of course, when I was already working and I had my business, um, Ramji was very keen that someone should join the board and be a part of the organization and help him, in a sense, spread the word and create that kind of buzz that Agastya needs. And that's been going on for a while now. And the book is the latest chapter of that effort. We really wanted
So
to
what,
bring
what
that.
other than Agastya you do? What other businesses you hold?
So I have a company that primarily makes polymers.
Okay.
And so it's a very different field. It's in a manufacturing setup, and we make polymers primarily for aerospace applications, for medical applications, things like that. And so yeah, so three hats, as you might say. There's business, there's Agastya, and there's writing. And at some point in the last few years, writing and Agastya have kind of combined, which the book is basically the product of that.
I read about it that you chose to write the complete story of Agastya when it was
It
decided.
was a compelling argument because I said it seems strange that I write and that I have so much of the story in my head already. So a lot of the anecdotes, a lot of the stuff that I've written is my own experiences with people throughout the course. So discussions with, say, PK Iyengar, for example, who is no more. So I could not obviously interview him for the book. But I was lucky enough that when I was in London, he used to come quite often. And being a young boy, I was always roped into kind of some errand or the other I'm going to, get something repaired. Why don't you come with me? And so we would end up walking through the streets and just chatting about life and physics, because I was doing physics also at that time. And so, the line that I say where he was standing next to Indira Gandhi and she was asking whether uh, um, the nuclear bomb, the project that we were doing, was going to work or not. And he replies to us that, Madam, if it doesn't work, then the laws of physics have ceased to hold true. So that was something that I remember him telling me, and I was quite bowled over by by the audacity of that statement, because that's how our Indian scientists had the surety that they had that the Smiling Buddha project, basically the Pokhran tests that were done back in the day, would definitely work because they were so sure of the science behind it. And he brought a lot of that surety and audacity into Agastya's spirit itself, to say if that's the kind of science we can create in this country, then we need to be infusing our kids with the know-how that they can aspire to those levels as well. And similarly, we've had Abdul Kalam come to our campus back when he was around, and he was a huge supporter of Agastya because he himself was from a very, very humble family and rose to the highest rank, you could say, and not just in politics but in science as well. And so he strongly believed that if you give an underprivileged child that spark, if you give them that belief that it's not just about here is how A plus B equals C, but rather, why don't I teach you how to derive this kind of equation in any setting that you can do? Then the child attains a whole other level of confidence, which takes them much further than they could have gone if they hadn't had it.
So you have been into entrepreneurship. So what you feel that doing a job, a 9 to 5 job, and entrepreneurship, how these both things are different, and wearing a hat of an entrepreneurship, is it better than doing a 9 to 5 job, or vice versa? Your view.
Let's see, I've had not a 9 to 5 job. I was in consulting, so it was never 9 to 5. It was pretty much all day. And consulting is very long hours, and you do feel after a while that it's taking its toll. But I think the difference is, of course, one is definitely the paycheck, a regular paycheck versus something where you're thinking, if I don't bring in the business, then I don't honestly deserve to get paid. Right? So you'd want to pay your employees first, and then pay yourself, especially when you're starting out. That is the model. So that is one thing. But again, a business is something that you create, It's something that you at some point look at and you can see all the levers that need to be pulled. And if you do it well, it's something that gives you a lot of satisfaction because it's, I find it very direct. Especially one thing when you compare with manufacturing, especially which I do, it's very difficult to lie to yourself in manufacturing. Right? A product either meets the specifications or it doesn't. If you test the strength of a polymer or strength of a metal, it's either strong enough to be considered worthy of use in an aircraft or it is not strong enough to be considered. And there's no gray area over there. You can't just say, okay, it's breaking, but I'll use it anyway. It will obviously be rejected. So that kind of almost, you could say, binary function of use is something that I find very satisfying because it tells you without any uncertainty that yes, what you've made is good, or no, what you've made is actually not good enough.
Perfect. So I'll tell you one story. It's a story of mine.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about entrepreneurship. So when you are young, mostly every person thinks that okay, now I should do something of my own and get a tribe by 45. That's the common thing
Yeah.
which comes into mind, and so this came to my mind too. I still remember it's 2008. I was in Malaysia, and in my flight, I was reading the networking, the network, the Facebook story.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
I was reading that book and I was too fascinated. I finished when I landed in Malaysia, and I was like, now I have to do something of my own. And I was in Malaysia for 3 to 4 months, and in those 3 to 4 months, I actually prepared a complete business model on papers. And my model was that I want to give Indian people, because for me, the statement that Indians are poor, I want to make them rich. So I thought this is the main goal of my company. And how can I do that? Because every day, the biggest expenditure what a common man thinks is of grocery.
Okay.
I thought, ki, okay, let's make grocery 50% down. I'll do that. So now I made a complete plan for it. And when I returned back to India, I started up a company called voicetongues.com.
Okay.
You can still Google it and you'll find that name.
Oh,
It's still
okay.
registered on my name. uh, 6 months I got a website developed. I was still working somewhere and got it developed. But then I realized, okay, now it's time that I should quit and I should pursue that goal because I was so sure about it. Yes, I can do that.
Which year was this?
Huh?
This was which year?
2008.
2000.
To
Okay.
8 or
Ah,
9.
okay.
Now the concept behind it, what I did, I created a website which is an online grocery shop, which today we have Big Basket and Grofers and all those things. That I did in 2008, 9. So I created a website. At that time, mobile apps were not there, so I created that. And the concept was that every item what I was selling there, it was almost 50% down the cost if you go to Big Bazaar at that time or any grocery shop. Initially, what I did, I used to go to Big Bazaar. I used to pick up items from there, and I tag them in my website with a 50% less cost. Now the concept behind was that and when I did that, my idea was going perfectly fine because people were hitting a lot. I was getting lot many orders, so my website was getting huge views.
Yeah.
Every page was designed in such a way that when you click on a product, a new page will open up, and then you purchase it. So that means every page was getting a view. So my theory was that the 50% cost what I'm selling less, that I'll recover from the advertisement.
Okay.
Because at that time, if you remember, there was a trend of getting website advertisements and all those things now, which is not in so trend. So my concept was that I'll get advertisements for my each page. So if I'm selling basmati rice for, at that time was 72, I was selling in 30, 35. So I thought, okay, I'll sell an ad that for every click you need to pay me 50 rupees. So I'll recover that 35 and 10 rupees will be my profit. So that was the model which I created. So, but that website boomed, like huge traffic. And then I realized that in a day I was getting so many orders that I was not having that much to deliver it. Because I was not having any stock with me. I was not having any warehouse with me. It was like I thought, okay, 5-10 customers will order. I'll go and pick it up from any of the local market and my team will distribute it. But then we realized, okay, we need more hands and we need a warehouse. We need some more items to sell. So then we thought, okay, now let's contact the main distributors. So I went to Hindustan, at the time it was Unilever, I think, to their head office. I said, I need like for grocery items. He said, okay, if you want Pop Student, you need to take a carton. So in one carton, I think they have 50 or 100 pieces. I was like, my requirement is like 25 pieces. No, no, no. You need to take a complete carton, and each carton will cost you like 2,500 or 3,000 or something. So then I calculated and I thought, okay, if I have to take all the grocery items in my system, then it will somewhere cost me somewhere around 2 crores, which I was not having with me. So I thought, okay, let's go to bank and ask for the loan or something. I approached almost every bank and they asked me that, okay, you need to give us 3 years balance sheet, a profit balance sheet, and some other documents, and then we can lend you the loan. Now my company was 6 months old. How can I give them the balance sheet of 3 months? Which is, I think now it has been, it's not there. I think that clause is not there. But that time none of the bank gave me that money. I was in trouble then what to do. And my team was saying, sir, we'll only get advertisement if we'll keep on running this views, because that is what we are, our model is. And that only we can do if people will keep coming on us and we are having the products with us. Because if we are not having, and we are out of stock, people will not come to us.
Chicken and egg situation.
Yeah. So then I started tapping up the angel investors. And you'll not believe, I had meeting with more than 10, 8 to 10 angel investors. And wherever I sat in front, they said, ki, what you are doing? You're selling atta, chawal, dal on website? Who will come and buy? They will go and buy it from the downstairs. Nobody is going to come and buy a grocery from your site. Who will open up a website to buy a grocery? If I'm not having rice at my home, I'll not go and open up your website. I'll go and buy it from the local grocery shop. This is a failed idea. This will not work. And literally nobody gave me a single penny. And after 6 months, I need to finally close it off with lot of debt, because I have taken a lot of orders I was having and I was delivering it at the less cost of 50%, you can understand. So all those things, and because I was closing up, so I was not getting any ads, nothing. I have to give the paychecks. So I was like in a debt of 20-25 lakhs at that time. And finally I closed it. I was like in a big trouble. And that day I thought ki being an entrepreneur is one of the toughest job in India, because nobody supports you. Angel investor I can understand, because they will see a business model. But yes, even government don't support you. And it was not that. In that umbrella, I started two more businesses. I started a small mini Netflix. At that time, you remember there were lot many movies which used to release in.
Market in 2008.
There were a lot of movies used with the pirated links used to come at that time. So what I used to do, and because of voice tongues, I was having a touch with Big Flicks.
Okay.
So Big Flicks was used to sell their movies on my voicetongues.com.
Okay.
So I talked to them. I said, okay, you give me the movie links and I'll make a website where the links will be available. People can pay 50 rupees or 25 rupees and they can watch movie live. So all sort of old movies, 80s and 70s movies, they provided me links. Some they provided me, some I got it from proxy and all those things. And I listed n number of movies. It was friedmovies.com. People can go and purchase with 50 rupees online payment and they can watch the movie. So that was the Netflix at that time. But when Voice Tongues closed, everything closed. I closed everything. I was in huge debt. Even frankly telling you, I thought that I should go and suicide somewhere because I was not having any money with me. Then somehow, support from family and everyone, that I recovered back. So telling this story, behind the question behind this story is, how tough is to being an entrepreneur as on date? Is still the tough?
See, anything with uncertainty is always going to be tough. I think some people have a natural flair for absorbing uncertainty and being able to continue about their day. You have bankers calling you, so and so you owe money to, creditors are calling, client has not paid. These are not in your control. And the basic why a lot of businessmen you'll find get quite superstitious and religious almost. Why? Because you have very little control. So you start saying, okay, if that light goes green in the next 5 seconds, then today will be a good day. You start building these superstitions in your head. In the book Fooled by Randomness, if you see, Taleb talks about traders and how they do a similar thing. If you go to you say you're going to office, but for some reason your coffee shop is closed, and the same day you go down the road, you buy coffee at the other shop, then you take the taxi around and you come, and you have a stellar day. Like you just, and he says, trust me, every trader will skip their coffee shop, go to the other one, take the taxi, and do the same thing the next day, because in the mind you get that superstition develops that must have brought me some amount of luck, because there's general uncertainty, it's not in your control, and so you go out. Now, some people can absorb it very comfortably, They know it's fine, I'll still sleep well. Some people it gets, you know, uh, too much to bear, and then they find, okay, I don't enjoy this, and that's perfectly fine. So a lot of folks that I know love their salary jobs because they're like, I can't do this thing of wondering if a client is not going to pay me, or if I've sent material to another country, it suddenly gets rejected. What am I going to do? I have to go and get it back. How do I do that? That becomes a huge mess. So these things tend to, over time, either strengthen you or they tend to bring you down to a point where you feel, I can't do this anymore. It's not worth it. So that depends on the kind of entrepreneur you are. It also depends now with startup culture. You have a lot of folks similar to the way you started, building from thin air, saying that I don't have anything but a vision and a concept and an idea, and I'll work hard. You give me money. I'm not putting any of my own money. From that money, I'll take my salary, I'll pay my staff, and I'll build this company to a point where you will hopefully get back double or triple or even more than that of your money. And I'll hold on to a share of my company, so my value will also increase, and that's what I will do. And again, it's a difficult thing. Someone's given you money and say the business isn't going well. The first thing you think is, well, what have I done? And yet there are people who can do this and they don't mind. They feel that, no, he's taken a risk on me. I'm taking a risk with my time. It's perfectly fine. The transaction is actually very balanced. Now, if this business fails, then he knows he's gotten into it with his eyes open. He shouldn't feel offended or feel that I've cheated him. And I shouldn't feel that I've done anything wrong because, again, I'm putting my 100% into this, if that is in fact, the attitude. So I guess it depends on what kind of business you want to run. It depends on how stable the market you're in. It depends on how much innovation there is. One of the reasons we push innovation at Agastya is we really believe that it is the cornerstone of someone's life improving from where it is to the next level, where you're able to take what is and you're able to turn it into something more without necessarily putting any more money or any more resources into it. That's what we call, say, design thinking. And so entrepreneurs have to constantly do that. You have to constantly innovate to stay one step ahead. Okay, today I'm making this, but tomorrow this might be commoditized. So I need to be working on this and the next generation of this. Otherwise, it's not just entrepreneurs. Apple does the same thing. If they don't release an iPhone every year, they're not evolving. They're not moving up. Even if it's an incremental change, they have to create a new generation. Otherwise, their market value the share will stagnate and they'll start losing market share. So it's the same with any entrepreneur. It's a risky business. I don't envy your story. I think it's more the rule than the exception.
I get goosebumps when I narrate that story. The toughest part of my life.
No, it's, the toughest part of your life is usually the bit that teaches you the most. Right?
Teaches you
always,
the most.
Yeah,
True. I always say that was the years which have taught me a lot.
I always say you don't remember the cricket matches where you coasted to victory. You remember the ones where there was the last ball 6. And that's the one where you're sitting till the end thinking, will it happen, won't happen? And you're cursing yourself that it's reached this point. But when it happens, you think, okay, now this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to my team. And the ones where you won with 10 wickets in hand and, 10 overs to spare, you're like, that happened, okay, fine, but it's not my favorite match, obviously. So
True. So how your early life helped you to set up this mindset? Or not being only of entrepreneurship, but giving back to the society also. Because it's not simple for everyone to think like that I have to give back something to society or work something for society.
See, to be very honest, for me, a lot of it happened in the background, and I was allowed to just get into it and out of it at my own convenience, which is not, I think people who truly make sacrifices are those who, cut the cord, the way Ramji did, for example, and say that, look, I'm literally severing a very, very important, part of my life, and I cannot go back. It's like you burn the bridge so your army can't go back and retreat. And so you have to move forward. There's no option, right? And so in my case, of course, growing up, I went to a school called Rishi Valley, which is again a very alternative kind of a boarding school. And we were taught that academics is important, yes, but there's a lot more to the world that one needs to take care with regards to the environment, with regards to how you treat your fellow person, the consideration you have when you say are walking and you say just throw a piece of garbage on the ground. Those kind of things would be taught to us at a very young age that that's not how you behave in a society that needs to thrive. And once I left, of course, I went to England. I studied there for 5 years. I did my plus two, I did my undergraduate there. And then I came back to India. And by then, Agastya had already started gaining a lot of steam. So it was, you could say, I wouldn't say a huge sacrifice on my part to become more involved because it was already showing that there's value addition here. And when I would go to, for example, accompany someone to go to, say, a government school or to go and meet a donor and see the kind of praise they were putting on Agastya, or see the kind of joy that it brought the children when you go into a school to see an Agastya instructor has come and he's brought all these experiments. It's like you feel like a rock star. And you really feel, okay, there's something good that's being done here that needs to be nurtured and that needs to be supported and that needs to be given its due in terms of your time. So at some point I said, look, I enjoy my work, I enjoy writing, but if I can give enough time to all three, then I would also feel at the end of the day, then that's, I won't look back when I'm, say, in my 60s or 70s and say that all I did was work. I could comfortably say that, okay, my time was equally divided by three meaningful things that all brought their own kind of joy.
When you see today's schooling, don't you feel that it's overhyped? Why I'm saying that, I'll not quote the name of any school, but yes, I was reading somewhere. There's a school which will give you some different type of facilities, different type of environment. Like till class 5, you need not to study with books. You will not have any chair and desk in your classroom, but you need to sit on the floor and study. You need to sit under the tree and you need to study. And that school is charging like 30 to 40k bucks per month. So is it not that these type of schools we have been to when I was in 80s? There were the schools which we say the government school where there were no desk and chairs, and then teacher used to make us sit under the tree and we need to study, and we hardly pay 5 rupees at that time. So is it not that we are going back to the same culture but just overhyping those things and making more money out of it?
These things have a way of coming around, right? You have now people wearing tattered clothes and paying a lot of money for it. You have people, there's that whole look has come back as well. And see, I mean, I won't say anything about the system because there's a truth to learning in nature, and that it does bring a lot. I wouldn't say you should overcharge for it, obviously, but definitely that doesn't take away from the fact that it's a system of learning, you could say, right? And what Agastya has done primarily is to say, look, we know that a lot of kids whose entire education journey is just mugging up what's in the textbook and then going and spitting it out in the exam paper, right? And even a lot of us who went through, school in India, we know that, okay, even though your teacher is encouraging you to learn, think outside the sphere of what is there only in the syllabus and to broaden your mind. But come exam time, you have to memorize certain passages. If it's history, you know that that para has to be verbatim written on the exam paper. Otherwise, the examiner will not give you that mark that you this thing. And that is kind of how the system has become now. And it's becoming a very intense system for a lot of kids, wherein the pressure is immense. And more importantly, there is a very unidimensional view as to what intelligence is. That is the other problem. In India also, sometimes if you're good at science, if you're good at maths, you're smart. If you're good at history and geography, okay, you're next level, right? And then people say, oh, then you go do commerce, right? But the truth is that there is intellect in all these fields of an immense variety. And a child should never be made to feel that because their strength, say, lies in humanities, or for that matter, music, or even sports. There was a time being good in sports in India was a pointless thing, because what are you going to do with sports? Unless you're one of the top 14 athletes in the country, you are not going to play a sport where anybody will see you this thing. Or you go and play Ranji, but you're not going to earn very much. So you would be discouraged from having a career in sports. Now that's starting to change, where people are saying, okay, the money is coming in. You can not necessarily be a international level player, but you can be a very good state player and still earn a good income. And if that is your strength, then why wouldn't you focus on that? What is the point of going and breaking your head over maths when you're a naturally gifted batsman who can at least consistently make, say, 30 at IPL? Right? So that would be a way of thinking about it. So these different intelligences were always discouraged in school. And what Agastya is trying to do is catch kids at an early age, allow them to discover that, I may not be the most brilliant mathematician, but I'm able to speak very well. which is again something that was not always, considered brainy. It was a good to have, but it was never something you could build a career on. Or I have a great understanding of how people interact with each other and what a person, how to negotiate, for example, or how to deal with a person. And today, if you look at HR as a field, it's slowly gaining traction where they're like, you need people who know how to manage people and who know what the right thing is to say to an employee in a certain situation, wherein saying the wrong thing could, spiral things out of control. So these are things that kids have inherently and strengths that they have. But you have to pull it out and give them that understanding. Put a mirror in front of them and say, hey, listen, just because A, B, C, D, E are the brightest 5 kids in class, that doesn't mean you're not bringing something to the table. So that fear that is there in education, if I say something wrong or if I say something silly, then the teacher will call me a fool. 5 people will laugh at me, so I'll just keep quiet. That fear that girls have, I don't want to put my hand up because the boys are very loud and they will tell me to keep quiet. That is something we've tried to break time and time again, to give kids the confidence that there is value in their voice and that if they have something to say, it's worth at least seeing if that is something that people will listen to.
I still remember in 80s when I was in school. There at that time, obviously in India, it was like either you be an engineer or you be a doctor. And even commerce was not there at that time, so it was like only a doctor or engineer. But in those days also, if you see US and other countries, there was a culture where people were actually doing what they wished to. They were musicians. Even they used to play guitars at the subways or somewhere, but they were doing it. Or even the pizza delivery boys, or creating something, or cooking something. That was the culture there. Yeah. In India, what I can see now, that it's slowly building up, where parents are letting their kids do what they really want, or at least we have started talking about it. But yes, there is still a gap where we don't know that, okay, my son who wants to be a musician, but actually what he will do after that. So, how Agastya or anyone else whom you know that is building on that platform where actually these type of jobs can be created, because we are not working anywhere to create such type of jobs.
True. I mean, this is something that the ecosystem ultimately creates itself. It's a very similarly a chicken and egg situation. That you have people who are interested in music, they start making. It's a risk always, especially when you're the first. And in India, as you're rightly saying, it didn't used to be an option, and now it is some kind of option.
Evolving, I see.
Yeah, and the demand is. Who would have thought 10 years ago influencer would be a job? Like, you don't know what's going to happen. You're basically just evolving with the times and suddenly saying, okay, where's the demand? And yes, I have a skill of catering to that demand, so I will do it. Now, Agastya is, of course, operating at a much more basic level, wherein these kids are given hardly any opportunity. And in their minds, they're thinking, I'll probably go into farming, like my parents, or I might get a job, say, in construction or something like that. Right? But that they may have some, totally different interest, and their strengths and skills might be more suited to something completely different. Now, coming from that social strata, how do you even envision that you can break into, a child studying in a government school thinking, I really enjoy music and I'd like to play on stage, is an unheard of ambition. Your parents will just tell you, please take it somewhere else. This is not going to work here. So now we don't promise that, obviously, and we can't offer it. But what we can do is at least unlock the child's understanding of themselves so that there may come a time. Okay, now the child goes through, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, writes his boards. Maybe he's an average student. Maybe she's a very good student. We don't know. Somewhere in the past, Augusta has shown her that she loves maybe theatre. Again, she passes, whatever, she comes out. At some point, she says, okay, maybe I'll explore it. And maybe that changes her life. But at the very least, she has a window into something, that a part of herself that is not, would be unknown to her otherwise.
What I'm saying, why I'm saying this, my son, he will be 17 in October. So I remember when he was in class 5 or 6, he was not at all interested in mathematics or science. He was not at all interested. I, as a father, tried a lot. Used to sit with him, teach him mathematics, teach him science, and I tried my best so that he can get science as a common father, I'll say. And Even in his 10th, when I was teaching him, I got a tutor also. I also sit with him and I try to teach him mathematics. I thought, okay, he may take maths. I tried to psychological emphasize that he should take. But after 10th, he came to me and said, I don't want to take mathematics science because I am not good at all in it and I'm not interested in it. I said, what you want to do? He said, I want to be a cinematographer. I said, no, what exactly is cinematographer? He said, maybe a YouTuber or something I want to do in that field where I can do video editing, cinematography and all those things. So I said, okay, perfectly fine. If you want to do that, we can obviously do. You can obviously do that. And so he took humanities because that would be his easy choice and he can continue doing all his things. Perfectly fine. Now he's in 12th and I thought, okay, now I should start searching where are the colleges where he can go to do cinematography or video editing courses. And I'm not sure if you have even searched about this category. But in India, I could not find even 5 colleges where you have the bachelor degree in cinematography or bachelor degree in video editing. You will only get some diploma courses, 3-month courses and at all. Now I'm struggling. Okay, now I've started searching where I can get. So I'm finding some colleges in Dubai, Ireland, Australia. I'm finding degree courses in those countries. But in India, there are hardly. There's one college, I think Subhash Ghai, Whistling Woods is offering. And one, they have media courses, which is covering journalism and all those things into it. But specialized in cinematography or video editing, there are none colleges which are offering.
It's strange because our industry is so thriving.
They have diploma courses. You will get n number of diploma courses.
Wow.
But no one is offering the graduation in these courses. And this is something, this field I feel is the most grooming field as of now, because when so much social media influencers and media is coming in picture, this is something which is the most loved job by the
and
Gen
it's
Z.
being ignored by the. But as you said, it takes time. These things,
Maybe it will take time, but that's what I felt, that when you start seeing that what your son or your kids want to do it, you support them, but then you feel that the system is actually blocking your way.
Or that it's not yet ready for.
It's not ready
that kind of. It's possible.
Because if you do cinematography, you have only a Bollywood and as an option, and there you know that how it works.
I mean, the same could be said of engineering, of most branches where, say, you wanted to be a certain kind of neurosurgeon. There may have been a time in India where you'd reach that point and be like, now I've reached the end of the road. I have to go outside the country to
do something.
And now we've brought those, gradually that infrastructure also gets developed.
So I feel our education system needs to think about that. What courses need to be brought in now? Based on the Gen Z type of situation, the way they are working or they are thinking, those things need to be. I always say that if you look at social medias, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat, all social media, they are from US. Why not an Indian social media? Because it's becoming a social media war. I'm not sure if my theory is correct or not, but I was just trying to compare the social media usage time against the GDP of the countries. And I realized that the countries which are using social media the highest time, that is from GDP. 2 hours to 5 hours in a day, they are the African countries, Bangladesh, Pakistan. All the countries which have the lowest GDP are using the maximum number of hours spending in the social media. India comes in the mediocre level. And you will be astonished to know the lowest usage of social media is US.
Really?
US, Russia, Europe, Germany, they are the lowest users.
So why do you think this is?
For my theory says that it's actually social media war.
No, but is it not? But the content that they're creating, they don't consume. You mean
they don't consume?
Basically, everybody else consumes it.
The way the reels are being created, I think the most has been created in India and other countries.
Wow. No, there was a time when Indians were considered very good clerks.
But still you feel, not only by social media, if you go and look into the telecom industry, the mobile usage and the mobile subscribers are maximum in these countries where the GDP is not good. Whereas in US, you will still see that people are using landline phones, maximum number of times. You visit a lot, the people only carry a mobile when they are out of their home, else they will prefer to have a landline phone. Whereas in India, our landline phone is struggling.
I've been trying to buy a landline phone for a while and I can't find one.
We don't find now.
Sadly.
So this is the mindset what I feel that it's need to be changed in our country. Well, coming back to the last portion of my podcast, you are chairman of Navam Foundation. So what exactly is Navam and how it is different from Agastya?
So Agastya created a lot of IP in terms of its models, in terms of its teaching methods, in terms of how the concepts are explained to children. And being a not profit, a non for profit, an NGO basically, Agastya was always never wanted to charge for this. The whole idea is that it's given freely to children. Now, Navam's job now, the mandate is really that can we take this IP and can we commercialize it by selling it to, say, private schools, selling it to labs, selling it to creating science centers, for private institutions, for example, in a similar way that we've done with Agastya. So using Agastya's, that we know these techniques work in sparking curiosity in children, can we use them to develop paid for models in other places? And then that money then is used again to support Agastya's non-profit ventures. So we're basically trying to get the private sector, in a sense, to fund the public, or at least the underprivileged, side of society. And so Navam's job is basically to do that. And parallelly, they've done an excellent job in creating content for the digital space. So they have what's called the TSAT network, which is currently in Telangana, which they're transmitting content directly into schools. So again, this is content around science, around hands-on learning, and it's very carefully curated and it's very carefully made with the child's interest levels in mind, and to understand how the child will absorb and appreciate the content that's coming through. And so now it goes to all the schools in Telangana. So that's a wonderful initiative that they've started. And it's been a great compliment to Agastya. But at the end of the day, the concepts, the philosophy, the ethos, as it were, is largely the same. It is the idea of, if you take a child a concept rather than a handwritten answer, how will it be different? So what we try and say is there a knowledge transfer? Because that's what education used to be. You're the teacher, you tell me where or which year the Second World War started, and now I know when the Second World War started. But I don't need a teacher to tell me that anymore. Information has been democratized almost entirely. There's no more what questions are happening that are, in the world right now. If you want to know which year Amitabh Bachchan was born, it used to be that you would have to ask someone and hope that their parents knew, and someone would say, no, my mother said he was born in this year, and someone else would say, no, my mother said this year, and then you'd have an argument, and there would be ambiguity, you'd never know. Today, you just find out with a press of a button, you know exactly when he was born. So information is no longer at a premium. What is at a premium is the scientific method, the thought process you take from going from what is the problem to what is the solution. Right? Now, the child takes that journey with an Agastya instructor, for example, and is then able to apply that thought process to any problem that they face. And I would rather the child takes that journey and comes to a wrong answer than you spoon feed them the right answer and then the child says, I know 30 different answers because somebody told me.
That's what is happening, I'll say.
Yeah.
My son, when he will study over YouTube. And as one day I was saying to him, why don't you go to your school and listen to a lecture? So my teacher will give me lecture once in a week. Here I can listen to the same lecture 10 times. So I can pause it, I can relook at why I need to have a teacher. I can listen here on YouTube.
But then that is that is again a transfer of knowledge, but it's an effective one because you get to at least accumulate it at your own pace, which is also very important. But further to that is the method of thinking through the problem. So consulting industry has been doing it for years. When you go for an interview, for example, and a lot of the major companies, they don't ask you how. They'll ask you questions like how many footballs are there in the world, right? And the idea is not for you to give them an answer that's accurate or exact. They're not looking for that. They're looking for how does your mind bend itself around this problem? What is your starting point? What data points are you looking at? How are you slowly building up this number in your head? Is that thought process structured and is it logical? And will it, if you are given the right data, lead you to the right answer? We are trying to do this for kids at a very young age to say that is the thought process you need to carry through life. Because tomorrow it may not be science, it may not be maths. It may be that in the case of this girl we write about, Shravani, Uh, she was from a very poor family, and she was an Agastya young instructor leader. She was one of the kids that we used to identified as having a lot of potential. And the story we tell is of her father saying he needs to sell the family cow. They had one cow. They were very poor. And Shavani had worked with Agastya for some time and had developed a sense of how the thinking pattern should be, or how it should be, approached problems such as this. And she begged her parents, she said, don't do this, because this is a typical poverty trap kind of an action when you sell the one asset you have and then you're back in this situation 5 months down the line. So she begged her father, she said, can you take one more shift in the evening just for the next, short term? Told the mother also, I need you to, if you can, just take two more shifts. I'll also bring in something from. Somehow they cobbled together some this thing and they survived the next 3 or 4 months. The cow gives birth to three calves. Milk starts coming from the cow. And suddenly the family now has 4x the assets, money coming in. Eventually, this girl ends up going to college from a family that was ready to sell its cow because they don't have money to feed themselves. Now, this is design thinking at its purest. I've not added any resources to the mix. All I've added is the human element of thinking through a problem and allowing that problem to not dictate or cripple me in the sense of how enormous it is, but rather allowing my mind to just think through and see, okay, what is the possible solution I can find given these sets of constraints. And when Shavani came to Agastya, she was, of course, the story became very popular. And she said, I really believe that poverty is often a state of mind, that we live in this belief that we are trapped and that nothing can be done. But if someone just gives you some helping hand to say that, okay, here's how you can think through your situation, then you're creating a whole different kind of individual. And that's kind of that is exactly what we're doing. And we've been doing it very well for 25 years. And I expect that will continue.
Great, great. So last words to the young entrepreneurs, from where they should start and how they can give back to the society.
So,
And what you have learned in your life, if you can give a message to them.
the book actually has a wonderful section right at the end called Key Learnings, which is something that I distilled from my many conversations with Ramji Raghavan. And then we curated it, and I said, look, I have to bring it down to about 15 or 16 points that a youngster potentially can read and get inspired by. So there's some wonderful things in there. One thing that he always says is have a very clear vision of your future. So like when you interact with people who have done extremely well and you interact with people who are maybe not so successful, one thing you'll find is very successful people from a very early age had a very clear vision of what it is that they wanted. And the path may have changed, the vision itself in terms it may have altered slightly, but more or less it's a fixed point that they're looking at and saying, we're swimming towards that point and that is where we're trying to get to. And it keeps you very focused, it forces your mind to think along lines that push you in that direction, rather than saying, I'll see what happens. The other thing which he says, which we discussed, is to embrace discomfort. That is something like how I said with uncertainty, for example, in business. Sometimes you just have to. This is a lousy situation. I have to plow through. And, that's from Finding Nemo, that famous line, which is just keep swimming, which is somehow, the best advice you can give yourself. As they say, if you're going through hell, keep going. Don't stop and look around because there's nothing to see there. You need to get to the other side. And so I think that serves you very well, especially in a business, I think, because there are often times where you think nothing is happening and the phone's not ringing and no fish are biting. And you'll find that a week later, okay, things have suddenly turned around. So how you keep your mind, collected and calm for that period when you don't know what's happening till the point where something eventually does happen is very crucial to, I think, long-term, keeping yourself in a state long-term where you don't kind of completely lose it. And final advice, please do read the book, find out more about Agastya, and I think you'll find it's an organization that is well worth knowing more about and well worth celebrating.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
So,
you.
guys, the link for this book is available in the description box. I'll suggest please go and read this From this 1 hour conversation, you must have known, you must have come to know that what this book is all about, what entrepreneurship is all about, what Agastya is all about. But yes, reading the story, the 20 years story of Agastya will give you a lot of insights in your life, a lot of learnings in your life, where you can do a lot of more things. So get up and get this copy of this book and read it, gift it, and I say it's a wonderful book and an inspiration for your life. So thank you for being on this show and
Thank you.
enlightening us. Really, really a great show for me. Thank
Thank
you,
you
sir.
so much.
Thank you, sir.